Hello again and welcome back to our course on Project 2019. In this section we're going to continue looking at views and we're going to start by looking at resource views. Now I'm still looking at exercise 04B and I'm going to go back into the View tab, and in the Resource Views group let's first of all look at the resource sheet. Now this is often the view we use to set up our resources, and of course it's got a lot of the information about each resource on it, and will also often contain helpful indicators such as over-allocation indicators. So that one's pretty straightforward and something that we've looked at before. So let's jump to the view above it, Resource Usage. And Resource Usage View is sort of a complement of Task Usage View. And what Resource Usage View gives us is a list of resources, and then for each resource a list of the tasks that that resource is working on. Now as usual there's a certain amount of readjustment needed here in order to make the columns and the split of the view a little bit more helpful. So I'm going to quickly do that. And you see that the first resource listed is unassigned. So the unassigned tasks, and those are the ones that don't have any resources assigned to them, that's really quite a long list on this particular project. As you know, the first two phases I haven't yet allocated any resources to. But if I go down now to the main body of what's in phases 3 and 4, I have 3 resources: electrician, plumber, and contractor. And for each one I can see a list of tasks that have that resource working on them. Now this can be a very useful facility for getting a list of the task that each resource is working on. And of course you've got the work hours shown on the right there. In fact, the top of this section, the unassigned section, is often very useful because it will basically tell you which tasks you haven't got any resources assigned to as yet. And very often you'll want to go through that and make sure that you haven't missed anything. The right-hand half of this particular view is a conventional timescale, so it shows the time phase data on the work for these resources. And of course you can customize that in the way that I showed you in the preceding section. Now you probably would have found this a very useful view to use to help you with exercise 4. But there's another resource view which can be very helpful when you're looking for over allocations and how to resolve them, and that's the resource graph. So I'm going to click on Other Views, and one of the items listed there is Resource Graph. Now this really is quite a different way of looking at resources on a project. The left hand of the display shows a little panel for a resource, in this case contractor, and you step through the resources using the scroll bar at the bottom. So you can see as I move this scroll bar it changes to plumber, move it again electrician, back to plumber, back to contractor. Now if I use the scroll bar on the right, it takes me through the time scale of the project, and what you'll see is the workload for the contractor resource in graphical form. Now let me just jump back to the resource sheet, and of course we solved our over allocation issue by having 3 contractors. That 300% there denotes 3 contractors. So let's go back to the situation where we only had 1 contractor. So we need to take this back to 100%. And you can see my over-allocation now pops up. So let's go back to the resource graph. Now you can see how this resource graph here would immediately have shown you where your over-allocation problem was. I'm just going to zoom out very slightly. And you can see that the contractor is over-allocated, and you can see exactly where the contractor is over-allocated as well. So this is a very good view for identifying where over-allocations occur. So I've introduced you there to a couple of other important views. There are many more in Project 2019. If I click on Other Views and then on More Views, I get this More Views dialog where you can access the many different available views. We're going to be looking at some more of those during the course, but I strongly suggest that you work your way through those and have a little experiment. And you can create your own views. You can copy a view as a starting point for a custom view, and you can edit the definition of a view. So as your use of Project 2019 develops, it's a good idea to find out about customizing views because it can really save you a lot of time and effort. Now, what I want to look at next is splitting the view. So I'm going to go back to Gantt chart view, and I'm going to go to the Split Views group on the View tab, and I'm going to click on the Details checkbox. And what that does is to split my view into two horizontal parts. The top part is still the Gantt chart, and the bottom part is now the task form. Now, the important thing about this is that the task form will show the task information for the selected task in the Gantt chart. So you can see there I've selected task 5, select style, and I can see all of the information related to that task, including things like any predecessors. Now let me go further down the project and select prepare for flooring. And what I actually see in the task form is I see the resource names here. So the contractor is the resource for this particular task. I'll also see the predecessors just here. Now, what you see in this task form is something that you can choose. So you can decide which particular information to show in this task form, and I'll come to that in just a moment. But if I use these next and previous buttons, they'll take me through the tasks in the project. So I've currently got prepare for flooring, which is task ID 45. Let's look at next. And you'll see that I now get the task information for task ID 46, prepare for painting. So I can control how I move through using the next and previous buttons. Now, as I mentioned just now, you can actually choose what you want to show in the bottom for the selected task. And if you right click on the task form, it gives you options. So we have predecessors and successors, resources and predecessors, schedule, work, cost, so on and so forth. And if we were to select something like schedule, it will even show in there the amount of work required for that particular task. So in this case, 16 hours, and I can also see the scheduled start date and the scheduled finish date. And I can also see the leveling delay that's currently applied. So there's really a good selection of things that you can show in task form view, and we can add more to this, which we're going to go into later on. So if I go back into the split view group and the drop down next to details, you can even choose what is shown in the lower part of the split view. So currently we have task form there. I could show resource form. Now you might think that's a little bit strange, isn't it? Showing the resource form when you've got a task shown in the top. But in fact, what it means is that if I'm looking at prepare for painting task, the person who's working on that is a contractor. And what I'm seeing at the bottom here is the work that the contractor is currently scheduled to do. So I can actually look at what one of the resources working on that selected task is doing. If I choose as my selected task second fix electrics, I'd see that an electrician is currently assigned to these two tasks. Now when you've finished using a split view, there is a couple of ways of switching it off. One of them is to simply uncheck the details box up here. So the other way is just to hover over the split bar there till you get the double arrow for the cursor, and then just drag it off the bottom of the screen. So let's do the horizontal one, like so. So there are a couple of other things I'd like to show you about views. You've already seen how to use the zoom to entire project, but sometimes when you're working on just part of a particular project, you may want to get some kind of automatic zoom so that you can see the most detail of that part of the project. So let's suppose I was interested in the preparation phase of the bathroom refit. If I just select those tasks in the preparation phase, go to the zoom group, the zoom button, And in the Zoom dialog, if I select selected tasks, what Project 2019 will do is it just zooms to those tasks. And in that way, I can get the maximum amount of detail in a view. And finally, one other very useful view I'd like to show you. Let me go back to the top of this project and just make sure I haven't got a particular task selected. And let's look at the calendar view. Now, calendar view is a very interesting one where you can see the tasks of the project set out in a calendar. And note how the milestones are coloured differently. So they're showing here on mine in a grey colour, whereas everything else is in blue. And you've got selected tabs at the top there for month, week, and custom view. And you could use that for showing a custom number of weeks in a date range that you specify. So that's calendar view, which can be very useful when looking at what's coming up on a project. That's basically all I've got for you on views in this section. In the next section, we're going to take a look at timelines, so please join me for that.